Hi, friends. I'm Emily Lay. You're listening to the Simplified podcast. If you're struggling with overwhelm and thirsty for a fresh start, you have come to the right place. I invite you for just a few minutes to slow down, take a deep breath, and join me to explore tactical ways to simplify, organize, and automate the complicated parts of life so you can focus on what truly matters most. Okay, so one of the most fulfilling parts of my life is being a mom. I've always wanted to be a mom. And I think it's because my own mom was the best of the best. She made taking care of my brother and me look super easy, from home-cooked meals every night on the dinner table to organizing chores with a very foolproof process filled with sticky notes, to creating a home filled with calm and order and love. And she did this all while working, too. But just because she made it look easy doesn't mean that it actually was. And I'm finding this out now as a working mom of 2 kindergartners and a 4th grader. That's why on this podcast, we are going to be talking about simplified parenting from time to time. These are episodes where you'll get practical tools and tips for all kinds of things, like how to navigate virtual school or how to build your little one's self-esteem in a healthy way. And I want to know what you want to hear about, so tell me in a review on Apple Podcasts or leave a comment on one of my Instagram posts. You can find me at Emily Lay. So as moms, we have a lot of responsibility in shepherding our kids through some hard or awkward conversations. And I don't think any conversation is as awkward as the talk. Oh yes, that talk. The one where your mom pulled you aside with hushed tones about your changing body that made you want to squirm your way right out of your chair. Everybody has their own story of when they had the talk. I don't even remember how old I was, but I'll tell you what age my oldest was when we started having this discussion. He was 5. So oh my goodness, this is such a funny story. My oldest came to me with questions very early on. I was very unprepared, and it was before school one day. He was in kindergarten and had learned a couple words on the school bus, and I kind of freaked out and sent him on his way to school, and then immediately called my husband at work and was like, it's happening, it's now, we have to have this discussion. And I spent the day researching, listening to podcasts, trying to find books, talking to my mom, trying to make sure that I didn't screw this up because it felt like such a big deal. And I also just was completely unprepared. And so I discovered Birds and the Bees. The Birds and the Bees is an incredible company / partnership between 2 women who I just admire so much. And I'm just so excited to introduce you guys to today. The Birds and the Bees founder, Flo Ridley, has been equipping and empowering parents all over the world to have more purposeful conversations about sex for more than 30 years. Flo and her husband Dave have been married for 40 years. They have 3 grown children and 8 grandchildren. And Megan Michelson joined Flo at the Birds and the Bees about 5 years ago. Before diving into the world of sex education, Megan was a middle school teacher. She and her husband Blake have been married for 11 years and have 3 young kids. I just know that you guys are going to enjoy so much learning from Flo and Megan just as much as I have. Here's our conversation. Hi, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I cannot even tell you how excited I am to talk with you guys and for this to be one of our very first Simplified Parenting podcast episodes. Hi, do you guys just want to introduce yourselves to everyone?
Yes. Emily, we're so glad to be here. We're just thrilled to be here. My name is Flo Ridley.
And I'm Megan Michelson, and we are the Birds and the Bees.
I love it.
And it is what it sounds like it is.
We teach parents how to talk to their kids about sex. We're going to put that word out there. So put those little ear pods in if you need them.
I can't even tell you, when I discovered you guys a couple of years ago, my oldest is about to turn 10. So it was probably 5 years ago. And I have a lot of parent friends that are like, I'm sorry, you started talking to your children at what age about this? But he was 5 and he had questions. And it was a question that was asked during breakfast, getting ready to go to school. And as soon as he left the house, I was like, okay, I have 8 hours to figure this out because when he comes home, we're saying something about it because my gut told me, and you know, it's the mommy gut thing. My gut told me it was time to say something because many questions are being asked. And in my Googling, I found you guys, and you have been so very helpful to me. And I just know you're going to be so helpful to everybody listening. I had the distinct honor of watching your course that you offer on your website the other day. And as soon as Brian came home from work, I was like, okay, sit down. We need to talk about all of this. I'm so excited that we are going to have this chat today because when I think about simplifying different parts of life, lots of parts of life are complicated. But as a parent, especially in the season that I'm in right now with 2 6-year-olds and an almost 10-year-old, this is a big thing. And it's something that's so important for so many reasons. I don't want to get it wrong, you know? And so that's why I'm just so excited to have you guys here. And I think the big question that we can kind of start with, why do you think this conversation is so scary for parents to have with their kids?
I think it just carries a lot of weight. I think it's important to remember that we as parents are post-pubescent beings. Mm-hmm. So everything goes through that lens of post-puberty mindset. Mm-hmm. And so the thought of sharing something like that with our innocent baby children, you know, even if they're 10, they're our babies, you know? So the thought of, it's like you're crossing 2 different worlds. And so I think that just makes us anxious of like, well, I don't want to tell them, but I don't want somebody else to tell them. And I don't want them to know, but I want them to know. And I think it's overwhelming as parents to try to explain something sensual and sexual to our young kids, because that makes us nervous. I also think it brings up a lot of insecurities in our own life, you know, or past experiences. I don't want it. This is terrible when my parents said this. I don't want to have the talk. That's something we're actively trying to get rid of, is this one big bad talk, an awkward thing in an awkward age. So I think we have our own memories or baggage of how that went when we were growing up, or maybe how that didn't go as we were growing up. You know, so many parents never say the word sex in front of their kids, or the kids don't get the talk. And then we also have our own experiences, you know, good and bad experiences, things that what made us feel emotionally, physically. So there's lots of issues here. Spiritually can be a component. There's just so much at play that I think it has everybody very anxious with this topic.
And there's a lot of anxiety too, if you think this is my one and only chance.
Yes.
And then if it doesn't go well, I'm done.
Yeah.
So there's a buildup of anticipating it. And so actually we have simplified that by what is it in cooking where you take it apart, you know, where we deconstruct the talk into smaller age appropriate conversations when they're asking. And so we talk about either pour the whole bucket of water on them at once, or a drip, drip, drip method. And also circling back if that didn't go well.
That's something I know you say, grace over perfection, I think is one of your taglines.
Yeah.
And obviously we have been following you for many, many moons. And in a way, I kind of feel like we're talking to the Oprah of our
oh my God.
It's exactly.
So I know that's very
kind.
you, but I really am like, y'all, this is big. Anyway, so we're kind of fangirling over here. But grace over perfection is something you've said a lot, and that's really resonated with our work too, because that pressure Mary Flo was just talking about is so real for parents. Like, okay, I do feel like our generation of parents feel or kind of have some understanding of like, okay, we've got to do this differently.
Yeah.
I think everyone kind of gets that at some level of like, the culture is very sex saturated, the things our kids are being exposed to and seeing and knowing. And then the old way of doing things, okay, I know I need to do something different, but then there's that pressure of like perfection. Okay, if I mess this up, then what? Or okay, I get one shot, and if I get awkward and crumble or get splotchy over my chest, you're like, this is going to be terrible. And so
that's me.
Well, that's a lot of us.
Right.
But I think that's what we really want with our course and our tools, to really come in beside parents and kind of like, you can do this. And we say, we want you to be purposeful and not perfect. So again, it's the same idea, but we want to have purpose behind our words and be intentional with our words. And we are going to mess up. You know, you're going to say something like, why did I say that? Like, so something we say a lot is to circle back. And, you know, these kids are in your homes, they're in your car,
you'll see them again
a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially this year. It's like, they're always there.
They're always there. I love having important conversations in the car because they can't get out. They're right there. So what do you think? I'm thinking about my mom friends and the texts that circulate, like, when is the right time? Is it 10? Is it 13? Is it 8? What do you think is the right age to begin having these conversations?
Well, it's a lot sooner than you think.
Yes.
But I want to not upset people that think, oh my goodness, I missed the window.
Yeah.
So if they're 10 or 11, anytime, you can jump in anytime. But we actually tell parents to start thinking about it when they're very little, because one of our first steps is for you to anticipate how these conversations are going to go, to formulate a family message, and then to start with vocabulary.
Yes.
So potty training time is a vocabulary time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a second child coming or a cousin coming and they say, how's that baby getting out of there? You need to be ready. And so getting ready for it is actually when they're very small.
Very small. This is one of the things I love most about the ways that you have helped our family, is that you've broken it down into 6 steps, right? And I love the idea of, first and foremost, whether you're ready to sit down and begin having these discussions, or you're really nervous, or wherever you are in it, to develop a family message that is unique to your family. And something I love that you talked about in the course that I watched was that all families look different. Some families have adopted children. Some families have IVF kids like ours. Some families have 2 dads. Families just look completely different. So you come up with this family message that then kind of directs your footsteps for how everything else will go. So talk to us a little about how we can come up with a family message that is important and special to us.
Well, I think you did such a great job recapping that, because what we want parents to hear first and foremost is that this is a personalized approach. We give you tools and strategies and specific sample phrases and all these things, but ultimately these are your kids. This is your family. And so your message and your approach to this is going to be specific to what you want your kids to know. And that's something we want to empower parents with, that, to kind of take that control back. If we don't have to wait for the school to say something, or the youth group, or their kid on the soccer team, like, we can be in charge of this. And that's going to be reflective of our family values and beliefs. So that will look different for every family. And creating your family message, what we mean by that is to answer the question is, what do I want my kids to know about sex if they're growing up in my home?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big question. And that's something that, if you are married, that's something you really want to get your spouse on, on the same page with, to really talk through that and kind of understand. It's almost like an overarching theme. Like, where do we want all of these conversations to go? What's our game plan? And that, again, that does look different for every family. But what we want to do is to have an offensive message. I think it's our instinct, with this topic, to have a defensive strategy of like, okay, you're not going to do this. You're not going to date this person. You're not going to watch this. You're definitely not going to see this, or, all these defensive approaches. But what we really want, and this is why it's our first step, is we really want parents to kind of have an offensive strategy. What do I want them to know? And then how can I move towards them with this information?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that so much. And it was something that when Brian came home from work the other day, I was like, okay, we need to talk, family message. And he was like, whoa, what are we talking about? But what I realized is, I thought for sure we were on the same page, that our family message was what I just assumed it was. And there were little nuances that were a little bit different for him and for me, based on how we grew up, or, all sorts of different things. And so working on that together was kind of eye-opening, and I know we'll direct our steps. Now, obviously, we're having different conversations with our almost 10-year-old than we're having with our 6-year-olds. But we have, like you say, even with our littles, we've introduced the cast of characters. So I thought it might be helpful. Maybe you could just give us a brief overview of the 6 steps and what those look like, and how how they all play into the process.
Okay, well, first is that family message. And like we just said, and we see that as the cornerstone for making this a successful series of conversations within your family, because from that message, you get vocabulary. You are using the words that are important to you, that they understand. And so we actually ask you to put that message into one sentence, which is challenging, but is a good process to go through, that like you and your husband are going through. So after you get your message, then you work on vocabulary, respectful, anatomically correct vocabulary. And that's
so important.
That's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step is to answer the question, so how is that baby getting out of there? Mm-hmm. Typically, children are curious about birth before they're curious about conception, even though biologically we know that the order, we follow their curiosity more than the biological order. So answering the question in a dazzling way. And we'll give you sample conversations of what does that sound like exactly? Mm-hmm. And then we kind of pause and...
Then we have a quick little pause for porn. It's obviously it's a very heavy topic, but I think that just because I feel very strongly that just because something's heavy or dark doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. If anything, we should just turn the lights on and make it known. And so in that little section, our hope is to inform parents and just let them know, be aware, these are the realities, these are the statistics. Kids are being exposed to pornography at very young ages. And then what do we do about it? And in all of these conversations, our hope is to give parents tools and the confidence to be proactive with these conversations. So hearing this stuff about pornography is very scary. But what we do not want is for parents to just stop there and be afraid and put their head in the sand.
Yeah.
That would be a failure on our part.
Yes.
What we want you to do is to be scared, but almost channel that into mad. Okay, well, then what am I going to do about this? I'm going to protect my kids. And so we talk about ways to proactively engage our kids just to make them aware. You know, there are some good pictures out there and bad pictures out there, and we share lots of resources. But just in the same vein that you would talk about any dangers in their life, like the oven, you know, swimming pools, like those things are dangerous. They're also fun and a part of our life and things we can enjoy as a family, but we need to be careful because of X, Y, and Z. So that is our pause for porn. And then we jump back into happy, easy topics for step number 4, which is reproduction in all living things. And this is a very easy step with young kids that you can have time and time again, just to re-emphasize this idea that new life comes from seeds and eggs. And again, what we're trying to do is just give parents opportunities to have foundational conversations over and over again. So they're building these ideas in their children, and it's not, again, one big bombshell conversation.
Yeah.
Then we move on to step number 5.
Yes. And so it's good to have conversations about seeds and eggs so that they understand that from seeds and eggs come new life. And so then it's easier to move on to the conversation of, so how did that baby get in there? Mm-hmm. Well, there was a seed deep inside of the daddy and an egg deep inside of the mommy. And when the seed and the egg meet, then the baby can get started. So it's really more about focusing on the mechanics, the design, the basic biology for a young child. You really don't have to enter into any kind of sensual story with them. What you want them to understand is how this works.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and for some families, like you were just saying, it may involve more science. But even those children who are IVF babies, they still, I think it's important for them to see the design of the seed and the egg.
Yep.
Because that you never can get away from.
Yep. All the babies come that way.
And that's why I think it's important to know is like, we're breaking it down to the most basic conversation of seeds and eggs and reproduction. And that is the basic biology, but the stories are going to be different for every family. You know, with IVF, same-sex families, adoption, all these stories are going to look different, but giving parents the words to use to start the conversations.
I love that. And then it all comes back to that family message to kind of guide the words and the conversation and how that goes. I love that. And I love I just have to get you guys to share the sponge metaphor analogy, because this is what, when I have parents who are friends of mine ask me, you know, when do I have these conversations? When I have it was a gut feeling I had. And when I heard you guys say it, I just felt very validated that our kids are sponges and I want to fill them first.
So the sponge analogy is that if you will imagine in the mind of your child a sponge, and you can label that sponge curiosity about sexual things. They just kind of want to know. They're curious about these things. And they carry that sponge around in their brain all the time. They don't leave it at home when they leave. And so I think when I was growing up, that my parents made sure nothing, out of protection, they made sure that nothing got into that sponge. And so I grew up with really an empty sponge. I didn't know what to think about a lot of these things. And that leads to confusion and also leaves you very vulnerable, because then you're wide open to whatever anybody else is going to use to fill that sponge. Also, if you think about the sponge, if you wait until the traditional idea of the talk, then that is taking a full pitcher and pouring it over a little sponge.
So overwhelming.
So overwhelming.
Big mess.
big mess. Most of it does not get absorbed. It's shocking. It's, it's just not effective.
And it could be the first time they heard penis vagina, which is like, whoa.
Wait a minute.
It just sounds like my brain is turning off at that point if I'm 11.
And the parent's brain is turning up. It's like, how fast can I run out of this room?
Yes.
It's a disaster.
Exactly. But the birds and bees method is really drip, 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 absorbing little pieces of information that are age appropriate. You're not having the talk. You're having lots of little conversations in an age appropriate way, focused on the message of your family and the basic biology.
Yeah, I love that. And even starting very, very young, just labeling parts as they are scientifically named, I think it also protects our kids so that if they need to have conversations about those parts or interactions with others and that sort of thing, we know, or other adults in their life understand what they're talking about. I also love what you say about just starting very young with the seeds and eggs conversation. I mean, we can have those conversations at the zoo. We can have them in the garden. I mean, there's just so many places where I feel like the concept, the basic, very basic concepts of seeds and eggs can be talked about in a very non-overwhelming kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what we really hope to convey to parents is like, you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
We know this is scary and overwhelming, and we know not everyone is going to be as jazzed as we are about talking about this.
Yeah.
You can be a confident parent in your own home and with this topic. And you can do this because ultimately, some people are like, well, can you just come over and talk to my kids for me? It's like, that's not nobody cares what so-and-so has to say. It's like,
right.
You are the best person for your child.
Yes.
You are, the best person to be the loving authority in their life.
The authority. That's what I feel like when I have these conversations with my kids, I channel a little bit of you, Megan, because I'm like, she's so confident when she says penis vagina. Like I would like to be.
You can do it.
You can do it. So sometimes I just practice it, but I want to be the authority. I want to be the confident expert on the conversation. And I've noticed, especially with my oldest, he feels very comfortable coming and saying, Mom, I heard a word. Can I say it to you? And then you tell me what it means. And usually it's some like word, it doesn't make sense. It's actually a word, but he has come to me with questions. And I feel like that's because we've tried to position ourselves as experts. And so that's something I've learned a lot from you guys.
Well, and something you were saying a minute ago about protection, I do think we have to see it in that vein also. Like going back to that sponge, if it's a full sponge, if something else gets poured on top of it, it's likely to roll off. We're kind of protecting our children with the information that we've put in the sponge instead of leaving them wide open. And a lot of parents are hesitant to talk to their young children because they're afraid they'll destroy their innocence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what we hear a lot. I just don't want their innocence to be disrupted. But what I want to challenge parents with, what we want to challenge parents with is that innocence is not equated with ignorance.
Yes.
We don't want our children to be vulnerable. We want them to have in a loving, knowing way, an understanding from their parents.
I love that. I love that. Mary Flo, can I get you to share, just this story just sticks with me, the story of your daughter going to, was it first grade? The first day of first grade? I just sat and listened to this story and was like, oh my goodness. How did you handle this? Oh my goodness.
Well, early on, Jill had asked how babies are born and how babies are made. Early on, I was expecting my third. She was pretty young. She was just starting kindergarten. And you know how children will come and just wake you up by staring at you?
Yes, all the time.
Yes. So she would stare at me and I would open my eyes and she would say, today's the day. I know you're going to tell me today.
Oh.
So early on, I had explained to her exactly how babies are made and babies are born. And I did it in the most simple way that I could, but I felt like she needed something. Once again, I just introduced the characters of a seed and an egg, a mommy and a daddy and a baby. And in the third week of kindergarten, she came home from school and she had a new friend. Mommy, I made a new friend, but I don't think you're going to let me play at her house. And I thought that was a curious thing to say. So I said, well, sweetheart, why not? And she said, well, after school, her 16-year-old brother watches her and she watches her 16-year-old brother have sex.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Breathe.
Right.
And I had labeled what I said when I did, just going back a minute in the story, when I had told her that that's how babies are made, I said, the name for what I've just told you is called sex. Mm-hmm. So I sat on the floor, Millie kind of fell to the floor, but I said, I'm just going to sit right here. And I said, sweetheart, I'm so sorry for your friend. But in a minute, mommy will make a phone call, see if I can help her, because that's not a good situation at all. So that was when I realized it really was her protection, that I had answered her questions. I probably never would have told her had she not been asking. She asked a zillion questions. I gave her as many answers as I felt like I could. But if that hadn't happened, there's a chance that she would have been invited over, and that would have been part of her experience. Plus, we were able to get some counseling teams over to that house and help that family.
Oh, my goodness.
I know.
My oldest, I mean, he was in kindergarten and he was learning things on the school bus. So it was way faster just way faster. And I'm glad that we had those conversations. Well, I'm so grateful for you guys. And tell us the name of your course and where everyone can find it, because it was just infinitely helpful for me. And you also have some bonus content with that course that I found to be just super helpful too. So tell everybody a little bit about that.
So our online course is available on our website, birds-bees.com. And the entire course takes less than 90 minutes. Again, it was exciting to hear you say that you wanted Brian to hear it, because obviously we talk a lot to moms on Instagram. But again, if you are married, you really want your spouse to join you in on this topic. So you can sit on the couch and knock this out in one night, break it up. So our online course is on our website. The course covers our 6-step strategy, but it also includes some bonus videos. Our most frequently asked questions are on there. Our number one most frequently asked question is, my child is touching their private parts. What do I do?
Yeah.
And we have our favorite resources. We share some of our favorite books and websites and other resources for parents. And then we also include an extra video about how to incorporate your faith. So for those families that do want to have a biblical understanding of sex in their conversations with their children, we talk about ways to implement our faith in these conversations. So all of those are included in our course, and you can find it on our website. You can also follow us on Instagram to share lots of helpful advice.
Yes, you absolutely do. Well, one of the things that we're going to try to do with every single one of these episodes is to leave people with like one tactical tip. If someone is listening today and they're like, okay, like this is the process I want to follow, what do I do? Like, what's my very first step today to get the ball rolling?
I would say a tactical tip would be to really decide that you're going to do this. Just like you had that gut feeling, some people have that feeling to run in the other direction, but to actually make the decision, I'm going to move forward towards a topic that's very scary to me. And in moving forward, that's very empowering. And if you move forward, and, of course, I want to say, listen to our course, but if you move forward, know where you're going will help you see, okay, I'm going in this direction with these conversations. And that will just give you confidence instead of reacting to, well, if they come and ask me a question, I will react, but what will I say? That's hard, because then that means I don't know what question is coming when. But if you decide I am going to move towards this topic and I'm going to get prepared for any question that comes, or I'm going to at least be prepared to address the topic, that would be, I think, the first step that needs to happen.
Well, I might add one.
Yes,
if we get
please.
maybe a twofer.
Two for the price of one. I love it.
I would encourage parents today to start the P's and V's, as I like to call it, penis and vaginas. And you fake it till you make it. If you are floundering inside and you prefer to use what we call the wingy wangy words, which we all have. But I could just encourage parents right away. A first easy black and white step is to introduce those terms to your kids. We want every family to feel this empowered when it comes to talking to your kids about sex. But ultimately, I think it's just as important that we protect our kids. And I want every child to feel protected. And I want every parent to know they've done everything they can to protect their kids. And using penis and using vagina and labeling those as private parts is the number one way is we as parents can protect them from abuse. Mm-hmm. So again, I know that's a heavy topic that we don't have to dive into.
So important though.
But if we start there, I mean, we are giving such empowerment and protection to our kids. So that's a big takeaway. And again, you might be squeamish on the inside thinking, my mother would die if she heard me say vagina, don't say in front of your mom, say private. Right. But every once in a while, introduce to your kids, oh, that's your vagina. It's a private part. Nobody else can touch that part. Okay, let's get our panties on. We're going to get ready for bed.
Yep.
I mean, these are small, matter-of-fact conversations, but
so important. In preparation for today, I started thinking last night when I was hanging out with my two little ones, and I thought, we've always used the scientific proper names, but we kind of gotten away from it. And so last night I started using the words. I thought they were going to fall over laughing. But one of my little ones said, oh, I always wondered what that was really called. And I thought, okay, well, this is good. And this is what we should be doing. So yes, that is such a good tip. Thank you guys so much. This is so helpful. And you have just really helped me so much, our family. It's been such a blessing. And I just know that this podcast and this conversation is going to be so helpful for so many moms and so many dads. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
This has
been awesome.
I know. Thank you. We are just so grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I told you guys, right? Mary, Flo, and Megan are incredible. So much of what we talked about today is just so important. One of my favorite things that they talk about is that family message and coming up with a message that is unique to you, to your beliefs, to your family makeup, coming up with just one sentence that is what you want to achieve or communicate to your kids through all of these conversations, whether your kids are tiny or a little bit older or whenever you start having the discussion. Obviously, we have kids in different seasons of life. So our oldest is 10 years old and our youngest two are 6. And so our conversations are different. But I think that just simplifying the process by breaking it up and thinking about it like drops of water on a sponge that eventually get you to that place where they understand and have been taught all the things is just so valuable. So using those anatomically correct phrases and names, having those conversations about seeds and eggs, and introducing the cast of characters in age-appropriate ways is just so valuable. So Mary, Flo, and Megan were so sweet to offer a discount code to you guys. The discount code is Simplified, and you can use it for a limited time over at their website. It's birds-bees.com. And you can purchase their course for 20% off. So thank you so much to Mary, Flo, and Megan for that. Wherever you are right now, I would love to just pray a little blessing over you and send you with some happy thoughts as we close out this episode and move on with our days. May you have the courage to have conversations that make you squirm. May your children receive your words with curiosity, and in 30 years, may they acknowledge how much you loved them as you risked being awkward. May you keep moving forward as a light for your littles, helping their steps through life feel a little more sure. Now, friends, my plan is to leave you with one simple action step at the end of each episode. Today, your task is this. Start talking to your kids about the wonder of where they came from. This conversation will look different depending on your family and the ages of your kids, but trust me, you don't have to dive in and tell them all the things. But it doesn't have to be hard either. If you're chopping a bell pepper at dinner, just invite your kids over and say, wow, look at these seeds inside. Let's talk about questions you might have. I think just giving your kids the opportunity to come to you is so very valuable. Positioning yourself as the expert and letting them know that they can ask you anything and you'll always tell them the truth. That's how we close out every conversation like this in my family. You can come to me with any question and I will always tell you the truth. Well, thank you for listening to the Simplified podcast. I hope this conversation left you feeling a little more empowered and confident to share this message with your kids. You can find me on Instagram at Emily Lay and at emilylay.com, where you can find the show notes from each episode, links and resources that are mentioned here, and you can shop the Simplified brand of products. Oh, and if you'd like more actionable tips to create a life you love, I have to tell you that we are officially counting down until the release of my new book, Growing Boldly, Dare to Build a Life You Love, releasing on March 23rd. If you're feeling stuck or uninspired and are thirsty for a book that's going to inspire you to go up against the hard, sometimes monotonous parts of life, this is it. Life is short, you are worthy, and it's entirely possible to flourish in the driest of seasons. Before I let you go, I hope that you'll click over to Apple Podcast and leave a glowing review of this podcast. This little podcast baby is brand new to the world, and it'd mean so much to me if you leave a review there so we can get this into lots of new hands. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.